Welcome back, everyone. Hope you got your favorite beverage and are ready for the final session, which will be led by Matt Burtz, shop foreman for AKRS Equipment. Matt is a maintenance expert that is passionate about building and implementing successful maintenance strategies and best practices. With his experience in both agriculture and food production industries, he has enjoyed his career growing through the ranks, from technician to director of maintenance. He knows what it takes to be successful from both sides of the desk. Matt previously served as maintenance director at Preferred Popcorn and is now serving as service foreman at AKRS Equipment Solutions. In this session, Matt will share his experience and expertise for building and implementing a PM program for the food and beverage industry. You will learn how Limble helped Preferred Popcorn design and launch a preventative maintenance program that increased their overall productivity, improved visibility on maintenance and inventory metrics, and standardized documentation to take the stress out of audits. Without further ado, over to you, Matt.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And good afternoon, everybody. Hope you have had a wonderful day so far here. All righty. As he said, my name is Matt Burtz. I used to work with the Preferred Popcorn, which was a company that we produced popcorn all the way from started out planting the seed to growing the seed, packaging the seed, and distributing the seed to what you would pick up in the movie theaters. And we're a global-based company. We shipped all around the world, based in America's heartland, right in the middle of Nebraska, and also have a location in Indiana as well as Mexico. So Preferred Popcorn is all about producing popcorn, and a truly fantastic company to work for, and producing great product and everything through that. So we've got a lot to cover. There's a lot of things I wish I could hit on here, but we'll just try to keep it quick here. I know it's getting late in the day for some of you guys. But some of the core challenges, we're going to present this kind of as a case study. Preferred Popcorn, when I joined them, they had just built a new plant. And so when you have a new plant, new equipment, new benchmarks, right? Some of the other things that we struggled with were inconsistent parts availability. A lot of that was COVID related. And I'm sure there are still aspects that I'm seeing even today of struggling for availability. Things have gotten better for sure, but we're also in a time of inflation. And so how do we make sure we leverage the resources that we have on hand and what's available to us out there? Another thing in the maintenance world, right? We want to make sure that we're making the case for ourselves. Oftentimes the maintenance department's viewed as an expense straight out of the gate. What are you doing for us, type of thing. But there's also the adage of fix it, but don't spend any money. So how do you do both, right? We got to make sure that we keep things running, and make sure that we aren't shut down and that we don't spend that chunk of change. And that last part is the lack of visibility. Some of that we struggled with. It wasn't that we did anything wrong. It wasn't that we were bad or out of compliance or anything, but we knew that there were ways that we could do things better. And so we'll walk through these one by one. So challenge one, establishing the benchmarks. If you have new equipment, it doesn't break down, right? At least we hope so, or it shouldn't break down as much. We want to make sure that new equipment stays running, as good as it was when it was dropped on the floor. And so with some of that, we didn't really know where to start with creating the PMs. We didn't know what PMs we were going to keep track of or how often. And so part of that, and I'm going to take each one of these challenges and kind of give some of the answers as we're rolling through here a little bit too. And but some of that was we went to our engineering company, the company that designed our equipment, and we sat down with them and we went through line by line of, hey, this is your equipment. How do we maintain it? How do we take care of it? What are some things that we need to look at, right? Because they've seen it, they sell it, they know it. And so we began to gather information from them, but where do we store that information? And that was one of the questions that we had, was you gathered up all of this information. Like, for instance, we had a dust collector, and it was a piece of equipment that I knew really well. And this is something, whenever you are thinking about establishing or building a maintenance program, especially around preventative maintenance, we want to make sure that we want to keep it easy. We want to start with something that we know really well. So take a piece of equipment. For me, it was a dust collector. I spent a lot of time with that thing for a little while, making sure we had everything fine tuned, that we weren't losing product, pulling clean product out of the line. And I went into Excel and I made this beautiful Excel spreadsheet. And I thought, all right, I've got my checklist. What am I going to do with this? I printed it off and I took it out to that piece of equipment. I conducted my PM. And then I'm standing there with this piece of paper and I'm looking at it going, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to put this in this folder and I'm going to be done with it? Do I need to come back and reference it? How do I keep track of it? And what if I need to come back and find it? And who needs to find it? And so I started with doing that, and it really began to formulate the idea that I needed a computer program, a CMMS. As I learned, I didn't know what a CMMS was, but I knew I wanted software that would help me to manage my maintenance, making sure I got everything done, when I needed to get it done, how I needed to get it done. And a lot of that stemmed from a conversation with my general manager. I took this document and I went into his office and I said, "Hey, what do I do with this?" And he said, he says, "Here's where we are." He says, "Right now we're firefighters." And he says, "But I want to become fire prevention. How do we keep from always fighting fires and being behind and doing the unplanned, costly maintenance to switching to planned maintenance? We're down when we want to be." Mariella was talking a lot about micro stoppages, which is, I thought, was a fascinating topic. And we were dealing with macro stoppages. Macro stoppages we're shut down, the line's shut down when we don't want to be. And those stoppages, not in my opinion, as a maintenance director and as a service manager, uh, cost us twice, right? Number one, we're not producing. So what are those employees doing when the line's shut down? Now you're paying them to stand there. And then the other part of it is you're paying for the repairs to the line. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were moving from a reactive form of maintenance to a proactive form of maintenance. So part of that rolls in with parts availability. We didn't always have the parts on hand. So where do we source the parts that we need? Several times I ran into situations where we actually had the parts and I had them on order for a month and I had no idea that they were there. I didn't have anything centralized as to where the parts were landing. I didn't have the parts on hand that we did have inventoried, other than the fact that I knew that they were probably in one of three locations. I didn't know exactly what I had, let alone part numbers. And so when I would call a company about an air compressor and say, "Hey, I need part number AXYZ123," they're like, "Okay, yeah, it'll be a month." I'm like, "Well, can we next day air it?" Or if it was available, and even next day air would take a while for it to show up. And so uh, later on, I would find out, oh my goodness, we had this on hand. How do I keep track of it? Where do I know that I have this part number cataloged? Um, and so the other part of that is making the case for our resources, making sure that um, we are utilizing the resources that we have on hand. And if we use what we have on hand, it's already been paid for, right? It's already been expensed out. It was an extra expense for me to order a piece that we already had on hand that I could have used. But even then, when we begin to think about downtime, one of the pieces that plays into how long we're down is, do we have parts on hand? And if we don't have parts on hand, where are we getting those pieces from? And how long is it going to take to get it? And what's the freight going to be? Do we need to send somebody on the road? Because we did that. We put somebody in the road. One time I even hopped in the plane and we went to go get pieces. And so this stuff happens. And so we need to make sure that we're not shelling out extra expense to try to get the part here overnight. And so we also made sure that we were trying to make sure that we established an effective inventory of what was available to us. And so if we can shorten that downtime, that time that we have an unplanned event, it happens, right? It doesn't matter whether it's brand new, used. They do happen, but we can mitigate that for how long we're down with replacement parts on the shelf. Sometimes that's a different vendor, a different location that we can pull that from. And then the last part of it was lack of visibility. Being in the food and bev industry, everybody's subject to food safety audits. And those are not just in a matter of keeping us in compliance, but they're also helps us to strive for something that's better, something that's greater. For us, at least in my experience, when we were presented with these different audits and everything that we went through, we wanted to make sure that we didn't just meet the standard, but we exceeded it, right? And those auditors are always looking for something. They want to see, how do you continually improve upon your program? And so sometimes, well, some of the issues that we were running into was they would give us, I worked hand in hand with our food safety coordinator, and he would say, "Hey, where are we at on this project?" Oh, geez, I forgot about it. Um, I had that in an email. You emailed me a month ago. Or I would bump into somebody else and say, "Hey, remember when I told you when this broke?" Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. And so I had trouble tracking documentation. So our food safety coordinator needed to make sure that his documentation was taken care of. I needed to make sure that my technicians were completing the documentation that was supposed to be done, and not just in a binder and a piece of paper that was going to get taken out, scanned, put in a folder, put in a computer file here, and then left to who knows what, to the cyber world to try to find and utilize. And so we wanted to make sure that we were getting things done in a timely fashion and that they were being properly handled. Uh, not only that, but we were also wanting to make sure that we were actually capturing the information that we wanted to capture, the information that we needed to capture, and in a way that was workable for us and was flexible as we were beginning to grow this new area. And so all of that to say, at the end of the day, we looked at our four challenges and we decided there was a couple basic things, right? These aren't crazy, um, but we wanted, number one, to increase our uptime. Uptime, what's that? It's time we're not down. It's time that we're producing. We're not in that middle of the dip, as Mariella was showing us. We wanted to make sure that we were producing the whole time, because right, if we have to shut down, it costs us twice. And so how do we stay in production? How do we make sure that the maintenance is getting done that it needs to be done? And then ultimately, it reduces our costs. If we're not shut down, we're not spending that money in a way that we don't want to be spending it. The other part of that was the improved compliance. We made sure that we were documenting all the information that we needed to capture for all the incidents that we'd have or for corrective actions. We made sure that certifications were tracked better and kept. Me and my food safety coordinator, we worked hand in hand. And so we were beginning to really build out. We took his structure that he already had in place in paper, and we began to build it into a system. And for me, in walked Limble. I spent 2 or 3 months looking through 6 or 7 different maintenance CMMS programs. And what one had really well, the other one didn't. And so it was a struggle for me to figure out what I wanted. And I had seen Limble out there as one of them. And I thought, all right, I'm going to take a look at this one. And when I did, I found everything that I needed. Um, because number one, I wanted to make sure that everything was customizable. It would grow with me as I would grow, and it was mobile. I could take it with me on my phone. I wasn't just a director; I was also the one getting dirty. As you can see, my hands are still dirty at the moment as I stepped out of the shop here today, and so I was part of the team. I was out there on the floor, and so I wanted to make sure that if it worked, I could make adjustments from my phone in our maintenance program. Um, we were capturing all of the information, as far as the instructions, as you can see, if you have any specific PDFs that you wanted to attach as far as a lockout tagout procedure. Hey, I want you guys to follow this every time, anytime you're dealing with something electrical, boom, right here. I want you to do step one. The next step right here, make sure that, if you need to have somebody come make sure that the power is locked out, in this case, have a superior come and check it off. You can add these fields in and take them away really quickly. And it provided for consistency. We had dates. We knew when things were getting done. We had priorities set. We had schedules out there that we were able to walk through. Some of that was our parts usage. So we wanted to make sure that we had parts on hand. I remember back when I was saying, take something that you know really well. Take something that you know from the back of your mind. You're sitting here going, oh, this is daunting. I got so many pieces of equipment. I got to build a maintenance program. Where do I start? Take that one thing that you know really well. For me, it's ag equipment. I've spent a lot of years working around John Deere equipment. I'm currently working for a John Deere dealership. And And so I started with, in parts, I started keeping track of filters, filters and oil. When I created PMs for pieces of equipment, I attached oils, I attached filters and part numbers. And so that way, every time a work order was completed, it automatically deducted that filter from my inventory count. So if I had 5 filters and we did 4 oil changes and it got down to 1 filter left, it would automatically notify me and say, hey, you're low on filters here. You need to order some more. And you say, why is that important? Because I didn't have to waste time going to town after we had used up all of our oil filters. The machine is down. I've got it in the shop. I've started the oil change and go, oh no, we're out of filters. Now I got to take time to run to town to go get the pieces I needed to come back and finish this repair. And that takes time. And it doesn't matter if it's just an oil change or if it's something on the line, if a bearing goes out, a shaft goes out, anything like that. Keeping those parts on hand and knowing what you have on hand reduces that downtime drastically. And so you can come in with an automated system like Limble, and you can keep track of your POs. You can dispatch those POs. You can send them out to your vendors and say, hey, I'm low on this bearing. Reorder these for me. Boom. And then we have a way of keeping track of it as you're going through the whole process. Um, we had we wanted to know maintenance history, right? So if your equipment is down, or if you say, oh man, feels like we just put those belts on that machine, when did we do that? We could go back and say, hey, we just put those belts on that machine 2 months ago. Here's the work order right here. Look, we went in and it says we put the belts up. Maybe we need to stop and figure out, why are we flying through belts on that machine so fast? It begins to provide a background of knowledge that you can go back and learn from, saying, hey, we're changing this a lot, or hey, we're going through this a lot here. We have a history of it. It's logged with this piece of equipment. How do we make sure that we take care of that? And the other part of that is for our audits. One of the things that I talked about earlier was for food safety. When our auditing company would come in and say, hey, I've noticed you made this change since last time. Can you show me the documentation behind what you did? Boom, we have already captured the information. And so it was really just a matter of a few keystrokes for our food safety coordinator to come in and open up, yep, piece of equipment. This is what we've done in the last year. This is what we're using. This is why we're using it. Here's the documentation. And it's global. Anybody that had access to our CMMS program could pull it up and look at it and be able to provide that relevant information. Part of that was after an audit was always done, right? There's always corrective actions. They want to find something. An auditor will find something. We're hoping and it's in that little small stack of minor compliances, right? We don't want the majors, we want the minors to be in there. And so he finds those minor compliances. And so from there, my food safety coordinator, he sent out work requests and he set them out and he said, hey, we need to make sure that we take care of these things. Boom, they're out there. And they're in front of everybody that's in the program. And so there, I can mark them as top priority. We need to handle these things right away. My technicians will pull it up, look at their phone and go, oh, hey, we need to get on this one first. The prioritized, he can come in. Let's make sure we get this done. So that way, when the auditor comes back and he looks at it and goes, hey, you issued this on May 25th, and by May 27th, you've already got it marked as completed. That's fantastic. Or if you're sitting there going, hey, you started this on May 25th, we're into almost September now. How come you haven't got this finished yet? We went in and we put in logs and say, look, we brought contractors in. We recognize that we need to do something different here. It's beyond what we're capable of. So in June, we had a meeting with them. Here's a log of that. And in July, they say they're waiting on parts. And then, here comes August. And now they're saying, well, we're hoping that we can get it done this fall. And we had a chronological order and a log of all that information that we had captured around a certain asset or a certain piece of equipment. And so we had supporting documentation that was in there that I could help add to make his job easier. And if we can show that, hey, we're trying to take action on this and we are trying to get people involved with this part of the process, that went a long ways to showing that, hey, we're serious about our food defense. We want to make sure that everything is taken care of in a proper fashion. And finally, one of the biggest things that this was for me were some of the biggest metrics right here was the completed planned versus completed unplanned work orders. Planned, we're saying maintenance, our regular oil changes, scheduled, belts, inspections, things like that. Those are the planned things. or we're working it in when it's on our terms. And we can go in and say, yep, this was planned, or hey, this is unplanned. Unplanned would be those belts broke. Shoot, weren't planning on that. But you're going to have some of that. But what is that percentage breakdown? Are we talking 80-20? Are we talking 50-50? Are we talking 30-70? You know, where we're 30% planned, 70% unplanned. And so we can begin to get an idea of where are we spending our time. You know, do we need to bring in more people? Do we need to consider replacing this piece of equipment? It begins to provide valuable data for how we want to scope and shape our program. And so at the end of it, beforehand, you know, our reporting capability was challenging. We wanted to make sure that we provided the right information, but it was cumbersome and not in a fun way. But you know, we certainly did well when it came to our food audits, but it was a lot more challenging than it needed to be. And that was because we grew, and because we grew, our maintenance program needed to grow with it. You know, and that includes the documentation. You know, you had to go to a certain guy, or you had to find a certain file to see when did we do that. Hey, Bob, do you remember the last time we changed the oil in that truck? Or hey, do you remember when that bearing went out? It was a challenge. Geez, I don't remember. But now we had that documentation centralized. You know, we wanted to make sure that we were maintaining everything we could possibly do to be in compliance, because right, we want to produce a quality product. We want our customers to come back. We want to make sure that they're buying into whatever we have out there. We want to have those repeat customers, right? And so that was what the auditing companies are for. That's what the FDA is for, to make sure that we are maintaining that compliance and that we keep everything going in the right direction. They included a clip here, that little picture up in the upper right corner. I did a YouTube video with Limble. I, I would still say it to this day. Limble was flat out the best maintenance program you could possibly have. Don't spend your time looking at anything else. I did the research for you. It was because number one, it was mobile. Number two, it was customizable. And number three, it was intuitive. It was easy to use. I could wrap my brain around it. I could easily teach it to somebody. And it did not require a lot of coding. There's no coding. You don't have to be the expert. And so you just have to have an idea of what you want to do with the maintenance plan. Maintenance tip number one, starting a maintenance program, find something that you know well and begin to test it with that. If it's not Limble, if anything with a maintenance software, test it with one piece of equipment that you know really well. Take it, build an asset, go out and do a PM. Even if it's a mock PM, do it and see what that's like. Record that documentation, see what it's like to recall that documentation. And then have somebody do a mock audit with you. You know, after you've collected some information, and say, hey, what did you do to this asset in the last 12 months? Boom. Let's pull it up and take a look at it. And so if you guys would like a demo, please scan the QR code, sign up for a demo, do a free trial, and follow those tips that I just gave you. Because I guarantee it'll make your take rate, it'll make your success that much easier for finding a CMMS program. You know, and those guys can walk you through step by step with anything that you possibly need. And so thank you everybody today for sitting here with me here. I talked through a lot. I was going pretty quick. I just wanted to make sure I fit it all in the time slot. I just turned an hour webinar down into about 20 minutes here. So if there's any questions out there at all, I would be happy to take some questions here from you now. So,
all right, thank you very, very much, Matt. Lots of great information. And again, as we've done earlier today, we'll move on to the question answer part of the session. If anyone has any questions that they haven't sent in yet for Matt, don't forget to post them in the Q&A tab. The first one here is, what is their customer support like when it comes to needing help with a project?
Great question. For me, anytime I had an idea, they have an awesome chat app, and it's a live person. You say, hey, this is what I'm trying to figure out. Can you help me through this? And they were very good at saying, hey, watch this video, or hey, yep, these are the steps that you need to go through. Prompt, very prompt. I had a person I could call at any point and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, and how do I build this out? What does this look like? And they're like, you know, I'm not sure, but I'll get back to you. Or if they did know, they would walk me through it. Or if they did call me back, they had great answers for me. Um, service is the other half of a great product. You can have a great product out there, but if nobody's willing to service it and back it, then the product can become cumbersome and challenging. And I think that's one of the things I loved about Limble was their ability to provide a strong level of service with everything that they had. So
Okay. How did adding a CMMS program to your company's practices make your day more efficient?
we were able to we knew what we needed to start on. We knew what was out there. Another key feature I didn't really get a chance to get into was work requests. Work requests could be submitted by absolutely anybody that had the hyperlink. We had laptops throughout the plant. I went around to individual people in the plant, helped them set up on their phones. Work request page was an automatically created page that I set up through Limble, super easy to do, and I captured all the information that I wanted to capture. I wanted to know who told me. I wanted to know which piece of equipment it was and whether it was inside or outside of the plant. Now, to them, all they had to do was select one or the other. And when they did, uh, what that did for me was it make sure I captured the documentation that I needed. Didn't matter to them, but for me, it automatically generated all the documentation and such that I needed. And so we were automatically capturing information that was essential. We were able to look at the tasks that were on the board for the day and sit here and go, hey, somebody sent this in on the night shift. Let's go check this out. Or our food maintenance guy, or excuse me, our safety guy was providing us with questions and providing us with information saying, hey, we need to get this done in a timely manner. So we were much more organized about what we were going to do in the day. And also we were able to generate work. You sit there and go, we don't want more work, but we were doing planned work. We did monthly mileage checks, monthly hour meter checks, and depending on the value that was entered, we had automatic PMs that would trigger. And so we were making sure that we were within equipment's time frame of, hey, this needs to be serviced every so often. All right, we're making sure that we're meeting those time intervals. And because we did that, the best reward that I got at the end of the year was when my GM said, this is the first year ever that we have not been shut down for longer than 24 hours. That was how we knew that we hit the benchmark. Like this, when we rolled in a CMMS program, we knew that we were moving far beyond where we had been before, simply because we had moved from firefighter to fire preventer. And the fires that we did have that used to be really big and out of control were manageable now. We had vendors in place, we had rentals in place, we had a lot of things backup ready to roll. And it was much more organized than what it used to be.
All right. Thank you very much. And with that, we've come to the end of our time. Thank you once again for a very informative presentation, Matt.
You bet. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
We have now reached the end of the Food and Beverage Max Uptime virtual event. I would like to thank all of our attendees for joining us today. If you have any other questions about any topics discussed during the summit, don't hesitate to contact myself or any of our speakers. Be sure to visit mromagazine.com or any of MRO Media's social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Once again, I wanted to give a big thank you to our sponsors who are an integral part of this event. Thank you to our gold sponsors, Lincoln and Limble CMMS. Don't forget to go to our events website to see a selection of product demo videos. Also, a big thank you to Les, Mariella, Matt, and our entire panel. Rake, Ray, Jeff, Keith, Alex, and Linda. Thank you once again for joining us. From all of us here at MRO and Food and Beverage Magazines, have a wonderful rest of your day.